Morning. This is Jamey from Stonemaier Games. I'm joining you on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, and I'm happy to be here with you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, your questions today. I'm here to discuss Stonemaier Games news, to share random topics and answer your non-spoiler questions. My main focus over the last week, one personal thing, one professional thing. The professional thing is that I've been revealing Apiary and talking about Apiary, a new game from designer Connie Vogelman and illustrator Kwanchai Maria. This is a game about bees in space. It's a 1 to 5 player worker placement game with an engine building element, a hive building element, and I've been loving sharing the stories behind the design and the different actions in the game. There's 6 different actions in the game, each that kind of level up based on the strength of the worker that you place there. Good morning, Chad. Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Miles. I hope you're doing well. Miles, I think, is coming to game night tonight, and I'm going to teach Apiary to my gaming group, the final version. Some of them have played the prototype version or play tested it, but they haven't played the final version of the game. So I'm really excited to get that to the table tonight at game night. Good morning, Tim, Carol, Rick, and Cynthia. Cynthia says the art for Apiary looks so awesome. Yeah, it really pops on camera too. Kwanchai has a special talent for making things look really good on film. So yeah, it's been just a blast showcasing all the different things in the game. I guess I'll show some stuff because last week I only showed the game. Now available online, you can see the rulebook. For the first time I didn't really talk about this, but the first time in the rulebook, we put a table of contents on the first page. I don't think we've done that in maybe a while. And we have reference icons on the last page. We have a teaching guide, so you can just kind of, if you're teaching Apiary, rather than having the whole rulebook in front of you, if you don't want to, you can just have this teaching guide where you go through this to explain the core concepts. We have the Automa rulebook, which is also now available online. This is the solo rules. And then we have the appendix that goes through all the different abilities, and every single tile in the game is described in here. All the factions, all the tiles, all that stuff. We also gave each player a reference mat, a little reference guide here that shows all the icons in the game and shows the core things that they need to know as they're taking actions in the game. I don't know why I have 3 of them here, but there are 1 per player. I think there's more stuck in the box here. And where are the other ones? I only have 3 right there. I know there's a full spread of them in the game. And then we have the hive mats here, 5 of the hive mats. And the game board, I'll show them. I know I'm ignoring some comments here. We have some more comments or components in the box. Where are those other little guides? I don't know where they are, but they're somewhere in the game. They're probably wedged in some of these other materials. But yeah, those are the core components here of Apiary. And I'll continue to talk about them. Actually, it looks like I don't. Presemic says teaching guide is a good idea. John says... John has a question about another product, about this Tapestry Civ, the final revised civilizations in Tapestry. When are they coming? We don't have an exact date yet. It all depends on when they actually get on the ships and when we think they're going to arrive. So we don't have a date for that yet. So we don't have an exact date. Sorry, Facebook is doing the scrolling thing that it does. Okay, let me talk about briefly. I will try to talk about the other elephant in the room, which is and I'll talk about this briefly because I've just now gotten to the point where I can even talk about it without completely breaking down. And I might still completely break down. So I'll just say it very briefly. I'll be very brief here. My dear cat Biddy died last week. We said goodbye to him on Thursday. It was actually a week ago last Wednesday when we knew it was time, and we asked, we scheduled the appointment with a vet the next day. So we had one last night with Biddy, which was really nice. I know not everyone gets that last night. Sometimes it's a thing that happens all of a sudden or in that moment. But we had one last evening, one last morning with Biddy, and then we said goodbye. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on it. There's several blog posts on my personal blog, JameyStegmeyer.com. There's a blog post about it on Monday on StoneMaierGames.com. I will get emotional if I linger on this topic. Biddy, he meant the world to me. Carol asked how Walter's doing. So Walter is the cat that is still with us. Fortunately, Walter's coming up on 13 years old. And Walter is being extra cuddly. So Walter, I don't think he fully understands what's going on. He's a cat. He has emotional instincts and intuitions. I don't think he fully understands, and he's not also the smartest cat. But he's been very cuddly with us over the last, week. So I don't know if it's him comforting us or him wanting comfort or him liking that has the king of the hill now. It's just him getting all the attention. Some combination of the three. I don't really know. But Walter is doing. He seems to be doing okay. I appreciate you asking about that. It's been interesting to have a cat that has survived this process of saying goodbye to one cat, because we're fully in grief and mourning this one cat, but we're also trying to still love the one that we have. And we do love Walter. We do love the one that we have, but it's tough. So anyway, let's, this will be an hour of me crying if we stay on Biddy. So, I really appreciate your thoughts. That means a lot to me. And, let's talk about other topics. Here we go. Garrett's changing the topic. Thank you, Garrett. He says, are there any games outside of the ones that you backed in crowdfunding that you are particularly anticipating? A question that I'm always bad at answering, Garrett. I'm either delighted when something shows up on my doorstep from crowdfunding, or I kind of put something on my radar, but then somewhat forget about it until it actually is available. So what am I excited about? And there are things, I'm always terrible at answering this, but I am so excited about many different upcoming games. Let me think if there's anything specific upcoming this year. I mean, I'm curious about the new Dune Imperium game, of course, because I love Dune Imperium. I'm curious about that. I'm still waiting on still waiting. I don't know if it's delayed or whatnot. When it arrives, it arrives. I'm excited for the Ark Nova expansion. I'm really excited to get that to the table. I'm sure there are other things at Essen that I will be excited about once I know that I should be excited about them. I'm kind of curious about that Rats of Witsar game. Let's hear. I'll look at the hotness to see if there's anything that is really exciting me about the hotness. I'm curious to see what Stefan Feld does with the Civilization game. And number one on the hotness right now is Civolution on Board Game Geek. Apiary is number two, our game, Apiary. So I'm very excited for Connie for that. Connie, the designer of Apiary. Age of Innovation, I've gotten to play a couple times already and really enjoy that. Yeah, I'd like to play The Witcher Old World at some point. I know that's already come out for many people, but I would like to play that. Let me know if anyone else has any Essen releases that they're really excited about. Stonemaier Games will have an official presence at Essen this year. We've kind of done that in the past through localization partners, but this year, Susanna, Dave, and Alex are attending, and we're sharing a booth with Inside Up Games, who has also had a big year thanks to their game Earth. So we'll have Expeditions there. We'll have Apiary there. It's been a big year for releases for Stonemaier Games as well, so it's fun to share that space with them. Let's see. I'll back up a little bit here for questions. Tony says, does the fact that the bee species, we won't call them race, bee species evolved from the Terran honeybees factor into the game in more than just a thematic effect? Wondering what drove that as the basis for the species instead of just a spacefaring insect race that was invented for the game. So the game was built from the ground up around bees, around honeybees specifically. I don't remember why Connie chose the Mellifera specifically, or if that's just what she called them for the game. So that is a great question for Connie. I don't know the answer for that, but I do know that the game, Connie, the designer, is fascinated by honeybees. She's an amateur beekeeper. She knows a lot about honeybees, and so the game was designed around honeybees and all the amazing things that honeybees do. And so that became the foundation for the game, and then we layered on this sci-fi theme. Yeah. Tim says, in Apiary, were there considerations on how the bees were numbered on the four sides, like the pattern and orientation? I thought about this so much, Tim. Yeah, in fact, this morning before I got here, I filmed my Tales from Production video where I talked about it a little bit. So a couple different considerations here. So here's what one of the bee miniatures look like. They're numbered 1 through 4. They're not dice. These are workers that whenever you retrieve them or that they're bumped, they level up in strength. And so I thought a lot about, should the numbers be pips? Should they be numerals? I decided on numerals. Which way should they turn? Like, which way is more intuitive to turn? And I just, like, playing around with it in my fingers, it just ended up feeling more intuitive or easier to turn it this way, kind of turn it to the left. That might be different for other people, but it was how I tested it. And also, which number should appear at the top? Which one should be, like when the B is face up, should it be the 4, the most powerful number? Should it be one of the other numbers? What ended up feeling the most intuitive to me, because they're often first placing a worker for the first time when it's on 1, that it should be face up when that happens. Also, as Tim says, should the numbers be, which way should they be oriented? Should they be like this? Should they be rotated? This is, as you're placing a B like this, like it seemed the most intuitive to have the number facing me there. And obviously they are also inked. So the miniatures are inked. This was part of the process as well, because we realized with the uninked workers, which was the original idea, it's actually surprisingly hard to see those numbers from across the table. So we had to add this ink wash to make them easier to see. Aaron says, any new Rolling Realms realms? She says she's addicted. You'll never be able to make enough for me. That's great to hear, Aaron. We do have more Rolling Realms. So we'll have one for Apiary, of course. We always do one for new Stonemaier games. And then accompanying that, we have 2 more based on other games. I haven't announced them yet. When I think I said I'm going to announce them next. Yes, I'm going to do my next live play for Rolling Realms next week. And so next Tuesday, I will announce the new realms for Rolling Realms. Looking forward to that. Presemic says, did I make a final decision about dual layered mats for expeditions? So one of the things I've been debating that I posted in the Expeditions Facebook group about is for the expansion, since the expansion, there's a little bit more wiggle room in terms of cost and price in the expansion. Should we consider switching over to dual layered mats that can still fit in the original insert? And also, if we do that, because there are two mechs in the expansion, that's pretty much the only thing I've revealed about the expansion, should we consider adding in 5 dual layered mats for the original mechs as well? And the original sample that I received, I posted on this Facebook group. You can see kind of a very rough sample. It isn't meant to be fully representative of the sample. It's very rough. Has some pretty big warping issues because the height of these dual layered mats is restricted because we need them to fit into the insert. So they can be no bit taller than 1.8 millimeters each for 7 of them to fit there. So anyway, Presemic is asking, did we make a final decision? Currently, I've gone back to Panda and I've asked them for some other samples with different concepts incorporated into this. And so I haven't made the decision yet. I'm waiting to get those samples. Yeah. Chad says that Unconscious Minds is getting close. I don't know if I backed that one, but I am curious about it. Josh says he just got First in Flight. Oh, yeah, I have First in Flight as well, Josh. That is over here. I have that and Skolventir on my want to play table of opportunity, shelf of opportunity over there. I'm excited about those. Josh is also excited about Wild Tiled West. I'm curious about that one. I don't have that one come up, but I'm curious about it. I always like what that designer does. Carol says, how is Essen Spiel Prep going? With sharing a booth this year, how has that changed this time of year for Stonemaier? That's a great question, Carol. It's something that I'm pretty detached from. I don't do much with conventions other than pay the bills when the time comes for that. But it's great to have Dave on board. So Dave is one of his big responsibilities is convention presence and how that's coordinated. It means that we do have to send games from China well in time to make it to Essen. So they are being air freighted. And I think Dave has been doing a lot of coordination with Inside Up Games to make sure we're aligned in terms of how people are paying for the games, how the booth is set up, how it's shared, things like that. But a lot of that is Dave. Alex is focused on meetings with distributors and localization partners and logistics partners. And Susanna is there to be Susanna's wonderful presence with retailers and distributors and localization partners as well. So I think they've been doing a lot of prep work for those meeting times. But actually having a booth, you're right, is a little bit different. And it's good to have Dave running the show on that. It's off my radar for the most part. I'm just here to support when I can support them with those efforts. Carol says she's putting Witcher on the table. Oh, she put it on the table last night. Her goal is to learn it and play it solo. I've heard that it's a lot of fun. I like the sentiment from reviewers seems to be that it just is fun, and I love that. I love when a game, like, it may not entirely make sense why it is fun. It may not be even the most mechanically sound game, but it's just fun. I love to hear that. Arturo says, I know that you typically don't play confrontational games. However, you've always shared that you really enjoy Kemet. Did you get around to playing Blood and Sand? What is it about Kemet that makes it okay to you, given that it's confrontational in essence? So, Arthur, it's interesting. I actually have not played Kemet in years now. It's not really the style of game that any of my gaming groups get to the table. And so I had Blood and Sand for a while, and we didn't end up playing it. So, as beautiful as it looked, I don't think I ever actually got it to the table. Um, the reason I liked it back in the day, and why I would probably still play it if someone was excited about it, is that Kemet is a game where you're kind of what do they say, that you're in a knife fight in a phone booth where you're in this very tight space. It is a game that it's built around fighting other players, and I don't know. There's certain elements of the game because of the tightness of the space of how it isn't the end of the world if you get beaten in combat, because you will be beaten in combat. It's also not the end of the world for another player if you beat them in combat. That's one of the reasons that I generally avoid confrontation games. I don't like to knock down other players. But in this game, it's just kind of a small setback. And sometimes it's actually a good reset to be knocked off the board and then get yourself back on the board in a better position on the next turn. So I think those things maybe add together to make me enjoy the conflict in Kemet. There's probably more too, but it has been a while since I played it. George says, have you seen the many good Kickstarter campaigns that have popped up recently? Mythic Mischief, more Terraforming Mars, the dice game, Barrage Maps, Harvest, Flock Together, Wormwood, and the upcoming Game Found Ryan Lockett's new game. Are you backing any? I have seen a bunch pop up. I'm curious about some of them. Let me see if I'm actually backing any of them. I don't currently think I am. No, I am not actually backing any active projects right now. I am certainly thinking about some of them. I'm following some of them, but I have not currently backed any of them. But you're right. There's a great array of beautiful projects that people put a lot of time and effort into. Garrett says, I know you don't talk spoilers, so let's see what Garrett asks here, but are there any games you know you will be printing that are not on the progress chart? There are kind of, I mean, they're pretty far in the future. It's hard to describe without spoiling anything, but kind of. But pretty far, deep into the future. Nothing that I will just totally surprise you with, out of the blue that we're already deep into the design and development process for. Patrick says, when do you believe that Euphoria and its expansion will be back in stock? I recall you saying they're being reprinted. They are being reprinted. I'm hoping for December, but it really depends on when the ships get out of China and when production finishes. I don't think production is finished for them yet, so it'll probably be maybe December, probably early 2024. Lori is joining us from Estonia. Anthony says, with games that have player mats like Apiary, are you ever concerned about the amount of table space it takes up, especially with many players? It is certainly something that we think about, Anthony. I always want what's best for the game, but I also want it to be able to fit on the table. And you're right, when you have a board on the table plus player mats, that can take up quite a bit of space. So yeah, we have the board plus the player mats. Similar to Expeditions, Apiary ends up taking up around 3 by 3 feet on a table, which I think is a reasonable amount of space. 3 by 3 feet. I think that's something reasonable to aim for as a publisher, right? So, but beyond that, I don't want things to get any bigger than that typically. Josh says he likes the blue shirt. Something coming soon. So, Josh, this was the shirt that Dave made for Gen Con volunteers, to give them something fresh to wear, because they've been wearing the Stonemaier orange shirts for so long. He wanted them to have some special convention shirt for convention demo team. And I just got mine this week when I did a submission playtest with Dave and Alan. So I hadn't had one, but I was excited to wear one today. So this isn't one that I think will be making widespread, but maybe if enough people want it, we're happy to make it. It's a fun color combination, at least for me, I think. Mark's joining us from the Philippines. Tim says, will there be an ironclad version of the expansion? Absolutely. Yeah, we wouldn't do that to you since you have metal mechs. So there'll be 2 versions of the Expeditions expansion. One that has 2 metal mechs, one that has 2 plastic mechs. Chad says, would it be possible to get a top 10 games from Connie? I think it would be great to see her taste in games. Maybe that isn't something I typically ask of designers, but earlier this week I did film a video with Connie about our top 10 recommendations of games if you love Apiary, or vice versa. If you love these games, you're also likely to love Apiary. And so you can get a really good taste, a good feel for Connie's taste in games through that video, where she goes through her top 5, I go through my top 5. So that's the starting point. Maybe I could do a true top 10 with her someday if she wants to, but that's probably just what we'll do. Yeah. Nazi says, how did you first meet Connie? Connie attended the Stonemaier Games Design Day in, I believe, 2021. I think that's the timeline. Yeah, 2021. So Connie attended that design day with Apiary. At the time, it was just the B theme game. It did not have the sci-fi layers to it. And you can even see it on our old post about Stonemaier Games Design Day for 2021. That's where I got to meet her for the first time. Julie says, I saw the Apiary Realm on the Mill video. That's true. The Apiary Realm has been revealed this past Saturday. Corel revealed it on the YouTube channel The Mill. Julie says, I liked how leveling up bees was a focus and matches a key element of the full game. Yeah, it's always fun to pick that thing that works for Rolling Realms that also is clearly inspired by the core game, whatever the core game might be. Lori says, do you remember a board game from the 90s called Diamond City? I do not. He says he'd love to find a copy someday. It was designed by a Finnish or a Swedish guy. No, I've never heard of Diamond City. Has anyone here heard of a game called Diamond City? My chocolate of the day today. What is my chocolate of the day? We have some treats. Yeah, a friend actually brought us some treats from Crown Candy Kitchen here in St. Louis, a little chocolate sandwich ice cream shop. So we have some of those treats today. That'll be my chocolate today. What are you all treating yourselves to today? I don't necessarily have a question. Usually, sometimes I have a question about a blog post that I'm thinking about. But I kind of know tomorrow's blog post is going to be about vision-friendly accessibility. It's going to be me basically posting the video that I posted on Sunday. It was an interview, a chat with Gary Bartos about 10 games that I considered going into this chat with Gary. I considered them to be very vision-friendly, and Gary had some great challenges about how those games could even be even more vision-friendly. So I'm going to share that video and some key things, some key takeaways from that video on tomorrow's post. So I don't necessarily have a question for you about that. I do have some notes to myself that at some point, actually one thing I do want to do, it's been a couple of years since I did a state of the channel video. So a couple of years ago, I did a state of the channel, state of my YouTube channel, to give people a specific time and place to say, Jamey, I think you should do things a little differently. I think you should do more of this, less of this, tweak this, do this better, and to share where I kind of think the channel is and what I'm happy about it, with things that I would like to change a little bit too. So if there's anything that comes to mind as we're talking today, I know we're on Facebook Live here, but these videos do end up on YouTube. Anything that you think of there that you'd like me to cover in that video, let's not go into like what you think I should do on the YouTube channel, but anything you'd like me to cover in the state of the channel video, let me know in the comments here. Betsy says, would you ever consider designing or brainstorming a simple game on camera, maybe a small series? Would love a glimpse into your brainstorming process. I think Betsy has asked that before. I do have a note about that, Betsy. It is something that I've done on a few interviews in the past where we kind of just come up with an idea off the cuff and brainstorm it out loud. It isn't, that isn't my normal design process. And so it's a little foreign to me because most of my brainstorming, my design process, my brainstorming happens on paper, pencil paper. And it's very cerebral. And it's also me like writing down a bunch of notes and then thinking of things and then watching like a video about another game that has a similar mechanism or similar theme. And I'm going back to my notes. So maybe someday, but it is so different than the way that I actually do brainstorm that that I don't know if it would work. I don't necessarily know if it would work, but maybe we'll see about that. I'd like it to be productive. Like I would like to do it if it isn't just hypothetical. Like maybe if it's something that I am actually working on or working through to do it live. And that might not mean that it's an entire game, but it might be a part of an expansion that I'm thinking about, that sort of thing. Maybe I could consider doing something like that live. Darius says, are we accepting volunteers for Essen Spiel? I'm not our convention coordinator, so I don't know if Dave is still looking for volunteers. But if you want to email Dave, you can email contact@stillmeyer.com to say that you are looking to join a demo team for Stillmeyer Games, and he can let you know if there's still room available for that. Thank you for offering that, though. I appreciate that. Steve is joining late. For anyone who is joining late, I'll say it again briefly. There's some stuff earlier in the video about Biddy. I should probably not go back into Biddy stuff now because I'll break down again. But we did say goodbye to my dear sweet boy Biddy last Thursday. Yeah, so there's some stuff about that earlier in the video that might be better for you to revisit than me to revisit live. Thank you for asking about it though, Steve, and anyone who's thinking about that. I really do appreciate it. Kevin says, how am I enjoying Ahsoka? Ahsoka, the Star Wars show. I'm excited about it. We watch it every Wednesday at lunch when the new episode is there. It has a very different feel than other Star Wars shows, but I love that it is a woman-led show. Like so many strong women characters, female characters on the show that are doing amazing things in different ways, different forms of showing strength and also showing weakness as well. So I love that that's a huge part of the show so far. Really enjoyed that part. And also the lightsaber duels have been really exciting. I'm excited to see them go to I don't want to spoil anything. I'm excited to see them go places that I haven't seen, before. Mark also asked about the Euphoria reprint. Mark, I think maybe it could end up in our web store by the end of the year, but it probably is looking at 2024 now. This isn't due to any delays. It's just, the production process takes a certain amount of time, and I haven't seen, that I can remember, unless Joe pops in and tells me otherwise, I don't think that we've seen the NPC yet for the reprint. So until we see the NPC, that means that it is not ready for the final assembly process of production yet. China also has a holiday in September coming up real soon. Maybe it's in October this year, but it knocks out like a week and a half of production time. Trishul says, do you have the same feeling towards all games in the Kemet Cyclades Inish series, or did any one grab your interest more than the others? No slight to Cyclades or Inish, but Kemet grabbed me significantly more than the other two. I think maybe due to the Euro-style engine building element of it. Even though the others do have that engine building, but all those tiles, that engine building that you're doing with those tiles in Kemet really appealed to me. Mitch says, would you ever consider selling the workers separately as dice? Interesting question, Mitch. I would say no, because they really are not designed to roll. They probably do roll, but I bet if you rolled this one 100 times, that there would be a face that it would show up on more often than others. So they aren't balanced to be rolled, even though they do roll. Like they're pretty cool D4 dice, as D4 dice go. But no, Mitch, I don't think so. But I would be curious. Actually, Mitch, I would love this. If you get a copy of Apiary, roll one of these dice 100 times and let me know the stats for how the different numbers appear. And I'll tell you what, Mitch, if you do that and it comes up nearly perfectly balanced, we'll send you an extra batch of the workers that you can use as dice. Steven says, have you played VR games, or do you play VR games? Steven's actually, so Steven, as you said that, I was going to say, a friend just mentioned that I should play Demeo, and Steven mentions it here. It's Demeo, Demeo. He also says, have I played Walkabout Mini Golf? I haven't played that one. But a friend literally just the other day recommended Demeo, so I need to try that on our Oculus. We haven't broken out the Oculus in quite some time. We used it a lot early on in the pandemic to stay active. But no, we haven't used it in a while, but I need to try it for Demeo. Arthur says, do you think the industry's growth, especially crowdfunding, will continue as is for the next several years, or will it slowly stabilize, or will the bubble suddenly pop? I sometimes feel like there's so many new games, it's overwhelming. I felt that way for a little while, Arthur, honestly, that the number of new games is a little bit overwhelming. What I'm seeing now, I think maybe this is a vast generalization. I could totally be wrong about this. What I'm seeing now is that individual publishers are making fewer games, whether for various reasons, which I actually think is good. I think that's good. But I'm also seeing even more new creators pop up with really high quality games, which I also think is good. I think that's good too, to have some new faces, new voices in the industry. I think that's wonderful. So I wonder if publishers making less is actually being made up for by having more new creators. Will it pop? Maybe. I think so. One thing I think will pop, or maybe has already popped a little bit, are campaign games. I think there. This has been my theory for a while, but I think there's an inundation of campaign games right now that people are waiting to receive or are already actively playing. That I think is making people a little bit more hesitant to get into another campaign game or to add one more to the pile. Right now, we have Lost Ruins of Arnak. So we've actually gotten a little lucky with these, that the campaign games that have arrived at our doorstep have been spaced out a little bit. And so, like right now, we're working through Lost Ruins of Arnak, the expansion, the campaign expansion. We have 2 more games to go. It's a lovely 6-game campaign. I love short campaigns. And by the time we finish, we might have another campaign game at our door ready to go. So yeah, I think that part may have popped a little bit. Josh just got Star Wars Shatterpoint for $50. He needs to. I've heard good things about that, Josh. David says, because of high shipping costs right now, do you think a crowdfunding campaign that is U.S. only is a bad idea or a good idea? David, I actually don't. Well, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I am pretty closely tied to shipping costs. I actually don't think shipping costs are all that high right now. I think they are higher than they've been in the past. But the 2 elements of shipping are freight shipping costs, which are actually lower than they've been in quite some time. They're down to nearly pre-pandemic rates. They're great, and then individual shipping costs, they have gone up a little bit. They have gone up, but they are not cost prohibitive. They're just a little bit higher than normal. So I think, I would say no, David. I don't think that premise is necessarily true. Or at least not prohibitively true. And I generally never think that a U.S. only campaign is a good idea if you have the possibility, if you have the ability to send it to other fulfillment centers as well around the world, like we do. We have one in the U.S., Australia, Canada, and one in Europe. So, but I also don't want to. If you're a new creator and you're looking to manage your risk a little bit, I understand that you might only try to sell to one specific region, but I think that is limiting the potential for your audience quite a bit, because the U.S. is only one very small part of the gaming world. Oh, Chad's watching with his little boy Owen. Owen probably likes how much I wave my arms around when I talk. Hey Owen, I hope you're doing well. This little 18-month-old boy. Javoy says, as a failed beekeeper, I've been interested in trying Honeybuzz for a while, but never got the chance to try it. Apiary seems like a very different game, but both about bees. How would you compare and contrast them? I get the sense that Honeybuzz might be more of a cozy game leaning to the cute animals theme. It is, that's true. Also, mechanically, I think they're very different. But I'll say some similarities, but they operate very differently in the game. So Honeybuzz, you are building a hive using hex-shaped tiles that are connected to each other. In Apiary, you're also building a hive, mostly of singular hex-shaped tiles. But the things that you're doing are very different. Like in Apiary, as you build your hive out, similar to Arc Nova, as you put a tile on your mat, you gain the resource that you're covering up, and the tile that you place might have an instant or ongoing benefit. In Honeybuzz, they're all instant benefits when you complete a certain place on your hive. Both games are worker placement, but the worker placement in Apiary is that you have these workers of different strengths, and the strength of the worker impacts the value, the benefit that you receive of each action. There are also special benefits that you get if you place a 4-strength worker on an action. In Honeybuzz, there's a completely different worker placement mechanism that is also pretty cool. It's worker meeples, and you have to place one more meeple than the previous stack of meeples on that action. And then there's also a very different spatial elements to the games, both in terms of the hives that you're building and where there's like a little spatial mini game in Honeybuzz. There is an exploration spatial mini game in Apiary. I think both games are wonderful. Both games are lovely, and I think if you enjoy the bee theme, I think they can both belong on the shelf. And even though they are both a worker placement, bee themed, engine building, high building games, they do those things in such different ways that I think they can both be enjoyed at the table. George says, is the video with Connie up already, or when will it be? It is not up yet. No, it's in the editing process right now with Joe. When will it go up? That one, I don't know yet, George. It might go up this weekend if I have it back from Joe. It also might be the next week. I might give Yeah, I might give it 1 week off. I do know that the Tales from Production video will go live on October 4th, first. So that's right before October 4th when it launches on our web store. Patrick says, has your partner, or my business partner Alan, ever done a top 10 with you? Alan, I think he does have a top 10 favorite games. But it may be one, I don't know if he's done the video. I think it's just been one that I have presented. Let's see, I'll search the YouTube channel real quick. I'll answer another question while I'm looking for this. Eric says that he likes that there's no need for additional player aids in Automa's in terms of Apiary's Automa mode, and that was discussed in today's design diary by David Studley. Okay, let me answer that question really quick about Alan's favorite games. Let's see, Alan favorite. This pops up on the YouTube. Yeah, Alan's top 10 favorite games. So this is me presenting Alan's games. Alan, I don't think Alan loves the camera, so he let me present that. But there is a video about Alan's top 10 favorite games. If you search our YouTube channel for Alan and the word favorite, you'll find it there. Chad says, I wonder if someone could find the live videos from COVID when you were making rolling. Oh, you're right. Okay, Chad, that's a great example. Betsy was asking about that earlier. Betsy, you were asking about could I show what it looks like to kind of design a game in real time. And I did that. Yeah, you're right. With Rolling Realms, the entire design process wasn't on camera, but a lot of the playtesting and talking through the design process was on camera. And those are, I believe, still on YouTube, still way back on Facebook, but I think they are on YouTube if you want to check out those very, very early things. That was in early 2020 when I was doing that live during those early COVID times. Chad, great memory there. Great thinking. Cynthia says that she thinks Dave is still looking for demo team members at Essen. Cynthia says the word volunteers. I've been told not to use the term volunteers for conventions because they are paid and they aren't just volunteers. So we'll call them demo team for Essen. Julie says, looking forward to hearing the conversation about making games vision friendly. And Julie, just to clarify, it is actually already on YouTube. It was my video from this past Sunday. She says, after you mentioned Colorblind Pal in a post this past week, I used it to look at a few games that caught my interest. Oh, cool. She says, given that her husband is colorblind, I found it helpful to see if anything could be problematic. It's also helped us show our son an idea of how daddy sees. That's wonderful. I love the idea in general, and especially for Colorblind Pal, of ways that we can see the world through other people's eyes and to walk in their shoes. I love you giving that example here, Julie. Peter says, do you have any ideas of nerfing Highlander in Expeditions? I played 3 games and it is one big each time. Getting cards directly to your hand feels too strong. Peter, I would say so the data has not shown that any particular mech in Expeditions is more powerful than the others. It does feel powerful, I agree, but the data has not shown that yet. So I would recommend that you try to break all the other mechs too. Try to find the broken strategy for each of the other mechs, even if it's different than the strategies that you might use with the other ones. But yeah, the data has not actually shown that yet. And I hear your experience. I think that's relevant. I hope you post it on our leaderboard so we can collect that data. We have a leaderboard for Expeditions on our website. But yeah, so far the data has not indicated that any mech is significantly more powerful than any other mech. Jeff says that Ahsoka has great heroines. That the titular character has been my all-time favorite since I watched Clone Wars. I haven't watched Clone Wars yet. Jeff says the show feels almost meditative at times, which I love. Ahsoka and Baylan especially have such presence. I agree. There we go. Joe's popping in with the Euphoria update. The Euphoria reprint and Ignorance is Bliss should be arriving by the end of the year. He says he's already processed the NPCs. I'm sorry, Joe, for forgetting about that. So that's great news for Euphoria. Likely, possibly, if it gets out of port in a reasonable time, that it should be in our web store and in retailers by the end of the year. Thank you, Joe, for listening along and correcting me for things like this. A few other people have said they really enjoyed the game demo. Thank you, Marlene, for reminding me that I need to say what acronyms are when I say acronyms. So there are 2 acronyms for versions of games that we receive before the final version of the game. One is PPC, which means pre-production copy. It's a copy of the game that looks really like a copy of the game, but it's just a one-off copy that's printed. PPC, pre-production copy. MPC is mass production copy. So that means after everything for the game has been printed and produced, But before assembly begins, Panda assembles one copy of the game, and they send that to us. And that's called the MPC, the mass production copy. And that is a copy of the game that we look over, and it's a time where we really don't want to find anything wrong with the game. But if we do, that's our last chance to fix something. And it's very tough and timely to fix stuff at that point, but it's our last chance before assembly begins. And it is our time to see, like, how are things ordered in the box to protect them. So that's often something we do at that stage, to make sure that everything is protected as best as possible so it arrives in perfect condition at your door. Thank you, Marlene, for calling me out there. Inclusive language means not using, or if you do use acronyms, that I explain what the acronym means up front. I'm sorry for not doing that. Peter says, any plans of creating a legacy type game, and what is your favorite legacy game? Peter, I actually have spent a ton of time designing a legacy game called Charterstone. And that's a game that's been out for a while. So that is my legacy game. That is my legacy of legacy games to the world. Probably, almost definitely won't be designing another one because it is a ton of work. And yeah, so Charterstone is my legacy game. He says, what's my favorite legacy game? Ooh, I really loved The King's Dilemma. I loved Clank Legacy. I'm looking forward to the second Clank Legacy. I'm looking forward to the Queen's Dilemma as well. I also really liked My City for different reasons. I liked how short each of those sessions were. I have a video about it. I think those are three that come to mind as favorites, but I know I'm also forgetting some favorites as well. Peter, do you have a favorite? What is your favorite legacy game right now? And just to stress, what legacy means is a game that features permanent changes. So it's not a game where you avoid permanence, or that it's different than a campaign game, even though many legacy games, or even maybe all of them, are campaign games. But it is a game that specifically features permanent changes. Whether you're creating components that can't be uncreated, you're destroying things that can't be undestroyed, you're opening things that can't be just restuffed back in those envelopes, you're opening them in such a way that that can't be undone. That's a permanent change. That's a legacy game. Javoy says, we only play campaign games in the winter months, so falling behind is definitely a concern. He wants to try Sleeping Gods with the expansion, and he wanted to play role player solo, seeking favor with one of the other factions. That could be fun. Role player adventures specifically is what Javoy is talking about. I am really excited about the role player expansion, and I think that's coming pretty soon. The role player adventures expansion. Mark says, I find Apiary and the Apiary realm super awesome. I can't wait to get my hands on them in October. Currently, based on our shipping estimates, the freight shipments for Apiary should arrive at fulfillment centers slightly after the launch date. So we're launching on October 4th. They should arrive in mid-October. So shipping will happen in the second half of October, and it'll spread a little bit into November at this point. That's our current estimate. We'll be clear about that when we launch in our newsletter and the launch notification, so you know exactly when to expect that you might start to see a shipping notification for Apiary. Joseph is asking about my open world game and information about that game. I don't really have information to share about that one, Joseph, yet, just that I am still working on it. I am still excited about it. And when the time comes to talk more about it, I will be very excited to talk about it. La Ludoteca says, we need better prices in South America. I think maybe that means South America. I don't speak Spanish. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the challenges in South America is the very, very high import taxes. So no matter how efficiently, cost effectively we can make games in China, for example, when we have to ship them and import them into South America, the cost nearly doubles. And I think that's one of the reasons you see such high costs. Because of those, like we've seen 90% import taxes. So if it's a game that costs $15 to make, suddenly that's nearly a $30 game just to get it into the country. Yeah. So I guess one of the questions that you might ask here, I'm not seeing this question, but a question that you could ask is why don't we make some of our games in South America? It is something that some of our South American partners have explored, but I don't think they found any way to fully match the quality of the games by locally producing them. But yeah, I think this is a great question and a reason to use the political power that you have to work on those import taxes. Because if you can knock those import taxes down a little bit, it can make a big difference for the cost that you see for our games. Frank says, is there going to be an expansion for expeditions that will include more player interaction? I haven't revealed the details for the expeditions expansion. I will say, Frank, if you're looking for combat and expeditions, combat between players, that is not what expeditions is. You will not see that. So if you're looking for that specific type of interaction, but there are many other different types of interactions, many of them are already in expeditions, and there are also some new types of interactions that will appear in the expansion. Chris says, I'm a young budding game designer. You've helped me a lot. Thank you, Chris, for saying that. I have an idea for a game component. Can you guide me about how I even go about this? Imagine a larger hex tile like in Expeditions, but imagine on the four corners of the hexagon a magnetically attached triangle with a dial counter in it. Do you think this is viable? I don't even know how to begin inventing something like this, but I need it for my new party game. Magnets can be incorporated into games. And I think a great example of this, Chris, that you could look up is the game called Merchants of the Dark Road. It's one of several games that uses a dial on the board where the magnet is actually embedded into the tile itself and then into the board. And what I mean by embedded is for any cardboard component like this, here's a docking mat in Apiary. What this actually is a piece of high density cardboard with a separate piece of paper. So this piece of paper that's up here, this is not actually part of the cardboard. This is a piece of paper that is printed as a single thin piece of paper, and then it's glued to this cardboard. It's dried for a long time to make sure that it warps as little as possible, that it sticks, there's no bubbling, and same on the backside. So this is a piece of paper that is glued here. So what they do when they want to embed magnets into things like this is they have the cardboard, they glue the magnet to the cardboard, and then they layer on the paper on top of the magnet. I guess you don't necessarily have to do that. You could glue the magnet to the top layer, but typically they embed it in there, they glue it under. And then they do the same for the board, and then you can stick the tile to the board. It's a little different than what you're describing, Chris, but it might give you some ideas of how a game manufacturer would incorporate a magnet into a component like this. Yeah. Steve's right. Yeah, Rolling Realms was originally called 9 Worlds, and I'm so glad that the game is no longer called that, because Rolling Realms has ended up with way more than 9 worlds. Anthony says, I've been watching through your entire YouTube catalog. That's a lot. That's a lot of videos, as well as a few other developers. Other than the new Thunder Road game that just came out, I don't see much about automated combat games that take place on a board, not with a ruler, just racing games. Is there a reason for that? Interesting. I think when people think cars or vehicles, they often think about racing around a track. Like I just played Death Roads All-Stars. That one is a racing game. There's one other than Thunder Road though that isn't a race. It is what is the game from Pandasaurus that uses cars? It's kind of a Mad Max theme, but is not a race. Someone can say it in the comments here. I'll say it out loud when someone says it. I know they'll be able to think of it. Pandasaurus game, really nice production, one of the best inserts for games ever. But yeah, I think maybe the reason for it is when people see the cars, they instinctively think they should be racing somewhere. Like that's what cars do. They go fast, right? Arthur says, have I heard any about the Levy and Campaign series? Some really neat mechanisms to describe medieval logistics and epic stories. High complexity but modular scenarios that create a fantastic immersive gameplay once the initial barrier is passed. So Levy. I have not heard of that, Arthur. Could you maybe post a link to it? I don't know if you're saying that's the name of the designer or that's the name of the game, but no, I'm not familiar with that. Are you talking about like levees, like with flooding, like that type of levee? Yeah, post a link here and let me know in the comments. Garrett says, one of my favorite videos of yours is when you unboxed the very first Scythe NPC mass production copy. That was a while ago. Peter says, so Peter asked about legacy games. He says, my favorite legacy game right now is Pandemic Season 1. Yeah, that's the one where it really took off. I think Risk Legacy was before that, but Pandemic Season 1 was one of the first really big legacy games. Steve asked about My Island, which is the follow-up to My City. I have not played that one. I haven't even heard much about it, so I don't know if it's fully out yet, but Steve says he's selling it in the store, so I guess it is out there with retailers. Eric says, can I use Apiary's Automa in a 3-player game? Like 2 human players, 1 AI. He hasn't opened the rulebook yet. You know, I am pretty detached from the Automa. You can tell I pick my lanes in some of our games. I know certain things. I don't know everything, though. I rely on my coworkers. I don't know much about the Automa system, so I don't know the answer to that Someone following along might know, but I don't know for sure, Eric. Andrew says that he's excited about the fan art Wingspan cards. Yeah, I'm so excited to reveal them in a few weeks. I'm kind of giving the attention to Apiary right now, but in the very near future, I'm going to start sharing information or sharing some examples of what the fan art Wingspan cards look like. So these are cards that we've already printed in normal form, and fans submitted art for these cards, and we have consolidated them into a single pack of 255 cards from the core game and all 3 expansions, with these beautiful, unique illustrations from fans of different ages and artistic experiences around the world. So that will launch at the same time as Apiary. So you can get Apiary and the fan art cards in the same order, consolidate shipping that way. But I will share information about them very soon. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. Chad says that Man vs. Meeple always streams right after I do, and he checks them out. He says, last week I told them that you revealed a new game without saying what it was. They were so jealous that they didn't know about it. Yeah, I heard from them after that. He says, I don't know how you consider reviewers, but they would be overjoyed to be considered for review copies in the future. I do send them review copies. They received Expeditions. They received an earlier version of Expeditions. But I try to bounce. I try not to. I know there are some people that I go back to more than others. But I try to bounce around between reviewers, especially for the advanced copies, where it's good for us. Of course, I want to make a big splash with big reviewers, but I also it's an opportunity for me to give reviewers with smaller audiences a chance to really shine and put them in the spotlight as well. So. They did not get an advanced copy of Apiary. Nothing about Man vs. Meeple. I love what David is doing there, but they will get a review copy of Apiary once they arrive. Yeah. Hilda is excited about seeing her card, her Wingspan fan art card, and for any Wingspan fan artists listening right now, what's going to happen with you is I will send you a promo code that you can use to order a free copy. So it'll be free and free shipping, and you can add more to it if you want more than one copy when it comes time to launch that. I'll send that email a few days before so you have the promo code ready. Johnny says, hopefully I don't derail the Apiary and Legacy game discussion too much. Jamey, have you been listening to any excellent music that you'd recommend these days? He said, I attended music at the Intersection in St. Louis last weekend and had a terrific time. We had tons of St. Louis-based bands and artists. You know, I haven't discovered many new artists in a while, Johnny, so if you have any that you really recommend from that experience, let me know. Especially St. Louis artists would be awesome. What was I listening to the other day? I don't listen to music very often, I have to admit. I typically work in silence. And when I'm like running or working out, running the stairs or cutting through a prototype, I'm listening to podcasts instead of music. So I don't think I have any recent discoveries that I can name, unfortunately. Keith mentions Thunder Road Vendetta. Here, Joe, Wasteland Delivery Express. That is the game from Pandasaurus that I was thinking about. Thank you. Yeah, Wasteland Express Delivery Service. Okay, here we go. Arthur linked to that game that he talked about. He says, essentially, you pay the complexity cost once, and then you get to explore many different places in the world. That's interesting. Okay. Oh, this does look complex just from the first look at it. But yeah, I always love learning about new games, even if they're not good fits for me in the long term. I love learning from them. So thank you for sharing that. Adam says, how important is art in games to your enjoyment of them, and do you ever think it needs to be reined in so it doesn't interfere with game iconography while playing? Adam, that's a great question, and I agree. I think that art and graphic design, even though they're often done by two separate people, they go hand in hand, and it's almost really the responsibility of the graphic designer to make sure that the art is subdued to the point in the right places so the icons can be seen. The user interface, the usability of the game, the accessibility of the game is really, really important, or you're not actually going to play it. So I think there are instances, where the art obfuscates those icons, gets in the way of those icons, and that can be a problem. Art is really important to me, both as a player of games and a designer and publisher of games. The art and how it brings the world to life, brings the game to life is, and even in abstract games, brings those abstract games, makes them beautiful on the table. That is really, really important to me. But graphic design is also really, really important to me, and having that clear, intuitive user interface. Keith mentions a good point to keep in mind about magnets. He says, I think there are additional safety testing concerns required for production. Yeah, I think that might be the case for any metal, and maybe it is even more heightened for magnets in particular. Yeah, because it could interfere with like heart monitors and things like that. Mark says, I found out that Fromage is a game that was also featured at Design Day in 2021. A few tables over from Apiary. I can remember where the tables were at Pieces Game Cafe in St. Louis. He says, did you consider publishing Fromage at one point? I took a look at it there. I do scout some games at Design Day, but I didn't think it would be a good fit for us for reasons that I can't remember. But I will say that I don't think I would have thought to go the direction that the publisher went with the art, and I really like the direction they went with it. It just has a really good cheesy feel to it. So I like that decision point. It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, I never would have thought of that. I'm glad someone else did, so they can make that game really shine based on the art. Ben says, are the Wingspan fan art cards balanced in such a way that you could play with just that deck of cards? They are. Coincidentally, in fact, like I sent Elizabeth the list of cards to see if there were any balancing concerns, because they were birds selected by the artist, not by us. And there's a very good balance among those birds. There's kind of a nice equal distribution between the continents and even the mechanisms within those continents. Ben says, what I mean is there a good spread of all the different nest types, habitat types, and abilities? Yes. It may not be 100% perfect, but it is pretty darn good, and so you could definitely play with those cards. In fact, I anticipate that most people who play with the Wingspan fan art cards will either play with them for the whimsy, for the charm of them, or they will play with normal Wingspan cards, the normal art from Natalia and Anna. Sean says, I listened to Children of Time and I thought it was really good. Thank you for the recommendation. Thank you, Sean, for checking that out. That is one of the books that I recommended to Connie as she was layering on the sci-fi theme for Apiary, the designer of Apiary. That is Children of Time, and it is a series, Sean, too. So if you enjoyed the book, you can check out the second and I think third books in that series as well. Andrew says, actually, before I see a few more comments to finish up, let me see if I have any other topics to cover real quick. I did go climbing last Friday for the first time in a little while. Actually, yeah, everything on my list I covered organically during this conversation. So I'll finish off with a few questions. Andrew says, I watched your recent video about the game Turing Machine. Have you tried a game called Hooky? It's another deduction game, but it's also a word game, so it exercises some different parts of your logical skills. It's one of my new favorites, and it's more interactive than Turing Machine. However, it's also a very heads-down sort of game like Turing Machine, which is not a downside for me. I know that can be a downside for some people. Solving a puzzle, figuring out the puzzle of my tableau in a game is something where I want my head down in front of me. I also want to admire what other players are doing, but I don't want them messing with my tableau or that heads down experience, that deductive experience. So I've not played that. I've not heard of that. Word games typically don't work well with my brain. As much as I love words and vocabulary and finding the right word for something. But I always love game recommendations. I'll keep an eye on it and see if I can check it out at some point. Carol's back to work. Thank you, Carol, for being here for the live cast. Jason says he just received Expeditions. He says we played with 5 for the first time. Really enjoyed it. That's awesome, Jason, that you had a good first experience with Expeditions. I'm glad you received it. I have slight bad news about Expeditions. The retail release date was going to be September 22nd. But there is an issue with the Panama Canal right now. I don't know the details of it, but there's an issue there, and it has slowed down one of the major orders to our distributor, GTS, in the US. And so we have had to bump the retail release date just so all retailers have the game at the same time. We've bumped that to September 29th. So we bumped it back 1 week. So I'm so sorry if you've been waiting for Expeditions for the retail release of it, but something unexpected happened due to the environment and the Panama Canal. So we're having to bump that back by a week. It'll still be a September release, though. Jason says that he's actually been through the Panama Canal. Go Navy. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I've never... Okay, so he says, Nick says the lake in the canal is under drought right now. Okay. So I don't actually know entirely if our shipment has gotten through, and that's due to if that's the delay, or if it is still waiting to go through. I'm not entirely sure there. Thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate it. This is the first live cast since I lost my, I lost Biddy. And so I was worried about how this would go a little bit, but thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the distraction. I also appreciate the tribute. and I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. I will see you next Wednesday for more talk about Apiary and Biddy and game, or not Biddy, well, maybe Biddy, we'll see, and games and other topics. And I hope you have a good time with your with your family, your pets, your pet family this week. Oh, there's one more. Let's see. One last question here. Edward says, I know you're a fan of intrinsic motivations. What do you find as the intrinsic motivation in apiary? I think sometimes it's just like filling up your mat. You don't have to do it. There's no like there is there is a benefit to doing it. You get some points if you fill your mat, but sometimes it can just feel good to do that, or feel good to be really good at one action in the game. And some of the tiles are also just cute and fun. So I might see a tile that just matches up with my personality. Like, let's see if there's one here that does. Yeah, I don't know. Just the art paired with a theme in Apiary, I think, does a good job of leading you down little thematic paths that might lead to those intrinsic motivations. But I'll think more about that. That's a great question. I'll think more about that if I have a better answer. Thank you all. Have a good Wednesday and a good week. I'll see you next week. Bye.